Well, our next guest is all over these local elections on both sides of our state line. He is Nick Haines, Kansas City PBS. Of course, he hosts the outstanding program Week in Review that airs on Friday nights and Sunday mornings, and he joins us on KCMO on Election Day. Hello, Nick. Good morning. Happy Election Day.
Well, good morning to you. You are sounding even more powerful than the last time I spoke because now you're 100,000 watts. I can feel it through my phone.
You know what? I knew you could, and you're right. You haven't been on the station, I don't think, since we put us on that 95.7 FM. And, man, I'll tell you what, Nick, that accent sounds even better on 100,000 watts.
Well, remember, I'm the one who broke the accent barrier in Kansas City. First person. to do that, and I hope it's working for me.
Well,
so one guy at Firestone said, "Is the only reason they hired you is because of that British accent?" And I said, "Well, I think there are some other things I hope that I bring to the table, including being one of the least tribal people you'll ever meet in the media in Kansas City."
Well, that is very true, and that's why we hold you in very high regard here, because you just shoot it down the middle like people in your shoes used to do, and unfortunately many don't do anymore. So, first off, I got to get your reaction to this before we get to the races. I just noticed, and I talked about it last segment, Quentin Lucas has put out a voter guide for Johnson County, Kansas, a state and a city and a county he has nothing to do with. Appropriate or not?
Well, he has been doing this. You know, you
Yes.
see in almost every one of his tweets, "Hey, Kansas City and surrounds." I mean, he's viewing himself as the regional mayor. If you recall, also, he put his thumb on the scale in the Johnson County leadership race and endorsed Mike Kelly, who is now the Johnson County chair there, which was an unusual move, too. So he fancies himself more in that regional domain, so I'm not surprised.
Is that unique for a Kansas City mayor to do?
It has been unique, though I will say it has been in the past. If there was a racial matter going on, say it was something in Overland Park, you know, say a decade, 2 decades ago, I remember Emmanuel Cleaver, who was then the Kansas City mayor, would weigh in on that, and you'd hear even Overland Park mayors and Johnson County leaders be totally silent on it. It required a Kansas City mayor to say something.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's start in Johnson County then, because the Missouri side has more issues in minor taxes. On Johnson County, on the Kansas side, you got these school boards, you got these mayor's races, you got these city council races. What is the most intriguing one to you? What's the hottest storyline right now of these local elections today on Kansas side?
Well, let me say, first of all, I hear from viewers about the sports stadium. I hear from viewers repeatedly about the Israeli-Gaza conflict. I hear from viewers about crime. I have to tell you, I've not heard one question from viewers about this election.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, that's an interesting phenomenon. What type of appetite is there for people to go to the polls today? Even though if you're in Johnson County, you will notice that there's very little stretches of grass available because all of these yard signs have popped up everywhere. School board races are incredibly interesting in Johnson County, but I will say what's interesting, people have a view of Johnson County as an area frozen in time, and it is a changing county. And we've noticed now that, you know, 1 in 5 people in Johnson County are people of color, 1 in 10 are foreign-born. Republicans used to be the juggernaut. Now they only represent about 40% of the party registrations. And the perfect illustration of that is the race in Overland Park, which is not getting as much as huge attention, which is with the former mayoral candidate, Faris Farazati, who is from Iran, and he is being competing against by Ines Yunus, who is from Iraq, and they're both registered Democrats. That says something about the changing nature of Johnson County today.
That is a very good point. It does tell you where things are trending when it comes to the county at large. The question, of course, then is, you know, who's more moderate maybe? What does that look like in some of these races? Is there a mayor's race? I mean, that sticks out to you? We know the Overland Park race a couple of years ago got a lot of attention, surprisingly. You remember that one with Kurt Skoog and Mike Zinnigy.
Sure do.
But what about, is there anything close? I don't sense that there is. We haven't talked to any of the mayoral candidates on this show because I don't get that there's a lot of attention on them. But is there anything that stands out to you on that front?
Yeah, no huge grandstanding, but it is interesting that there are totally open seats. I mean, you have longtime mayors in Shawnee, in Lenexa, in Leawood, all stepping down, so you have completely new people running for those positions. That's a change. One of the big interesting trends, of course, is that this time around you have the machinery of the party politics putting their thumb on the scale in a huge way in these local races. So for the first time, you now have Johnson County Democrats, Johnson County Republicans putting out voter guides, putting out mailers specifically saying, hey, these are our guys. Now, in the past, if you recall, local elections, we were always told that nobody, there's no Republican way of filling a pothole. There's no Democratic way of doing that. Now we are very much putting it into party politics. So we even have Democratic and Republican candidates for water district and the Johnson County Community College Board of Trustees. That the nationalization of local elections, I think, is a huge difference now in this cycle.
A very interesting point. Will it lead to more turnout, though, is the question. What do you think, Nick Haines?
Well, I think, it's interesting that there's been a pretense on this over the years. So it's not like we didn't know this before, and sometimes there would be a nod and a wink to it. But this is the most overt practicing of party politics at the local level. I've been looking at a number of reports on this across the country, and actually there is a view that it actually gravitates and pulls and increases turnout as a result of that, because it gives a very quick shorthand for folks to know how to vote. And, how would you know who these water district people are, who these board of trustees? You might have one or two races you're interested in, but you couldn't possibly know about all of these local elections. I mean, there's too many places and too many offices for you to be paying attention to. So that is a good shorthand for doing that. And certainly the candidates are leaning into it too by even bringing up some of these national issues in their races. If you recall, even last year in Shawnee, they certainly had a vote on banning transgender from competing in girls' and women's sports, if you recall, even though that was not a Shawnee issue. They didn't have anything they can actually do about it. That was a state issue. That was something that the sports organizations in Kansas at the state level had to deal with, but it was really important for them to be weighing in on those matters. And so we're increasingly seeing that happening all across the board at every level of government.
Mm-hmm. On the Missouri side, Nick, it looks like there's not a lot, but there's some local tax issues. The one thing it looks like, this question one for Jackson County voters, I mean, it's way too long-winded, but it's basically imposing a local use tax for what they say is financing road and bridge construction projects within the county. But then it says it's also for financial assistance to homeless people and people at risk of becoming homeless. So which one is it, Nick? Is it for construction projects or is it for the homeless?
No, this is a great point, and this is the online tax in Jackson County. Again, it's been passed many times in other jurisdictions without any contention. But remember, Frank White, the Jackson County leader, didn't even want to put this on the ballot. He was, first of all, worried that it would come out as the double-digit property tax bills would be coming into people's homes, that this wasn't the time to do it. That's number one. So you could see a bit of a backlash on that on Tuesday as a result of that. And secondly, you're right. He also was concerned about where the money was going. And he didn't even want it to go to those places because he wanted far more flexibility for where that money is spent. Oftentimes, it's true even in Kansas City and other jurisdictions, does the money go where they say it's going to go? Is there a shell game that takes place? I think there needs to be a level of accountability once an election takes place to make sure that the money they claim is going to go to those pots, which would include even renovation of the downtown courthouse in Jackson County, homeless projects, that they actually go to those places. I'm not thinking this is going to fail on Tuesday night, but it'll be interesting to see how close this election is. And on the bus tax, if people are objecting to so much money being spent on some of these services and that people have a right to protest, this is one of the small ways they can protest. Let's see how close it is on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and I think they run the risk, of course, of as long-winded as these questions are, if people don't get it, I mean, I hope they just vote no. I mean, I'm not telling them how to vote on this thing, but I'm just saying it seems like the more long-winded you get, the more likely people say, I don't know what I'm voting on, so I'm voting no. That's just human nature.
Yeah, well, but that's true of all of these matters,
True.
And yet
they pass.
Yeah, they do pass. You look at the demographics in Kansas City or in Jackson County. most likely it is going to pass. We've also got this on a November election. If you recall, even in Johnson County, it wasn't that long ago that these elections were decided in April. It's a very modern phenomenon that we've decided to try and boost turnout and do things in November. And in fact, that has happened.
Mm-hmm.
There was a 70% increase in turnout at the local election. We're still looking at small numbers. Don't think we got an avalanche of people coming to the polls. But you went from 10% to about 17% once that change was made.
Well, Nick, we'll be following tonight, of course, and you're the best. Appreciate the time.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Nick Haines on a Election Day Tuesday on KCMO. Good work by him.